7:15 here on Morning Live. Welcome. President Michelle Bachelet of Chile will present the 12th annual Nelson Mandela lecture tomorrow in Cape Town. This year's lecture is particularly significant. It is the first to be delivered following Mr. Mandela's passing last year, December. This year's series will include an interactive gender dialogue where President Michelle Bachelet of Chile will engage with South African proponents of gender equity to answer the question, does gender still matter in the ongoing work of liberation? To talk more about this, we are joined in studio now by Nomboniso Gasa, who is, of course, a gender activist herself. It's good to have you. Thank you very much for being with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and good morning.
Let's first begin by looking at the actual Nelson Mandela annual lecture. What does it mean for South Africans? Do South Africans take it seriously?
Well, I think they do. It is a platform where a whole range of issues are being discussed, and sometimes it's helpful to have somebody else from outside to reflect on their own journey and to give us a perspective of where we are as South Africans in relation to the world, because sometimes we think that our problems are peculiar to us, and it's important to get a perspective of how those relate to some of the challenges in the world. So I think that the Nelson Mandela Foundation is one of the very important, the Nelson Mandela Foundation's lecture, the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture, is one of the most important platforms that we have to reflect, to engage, and to have perspectives from people from outside.
Yeah. So let's take tomorrow for an example. Tomorrow, National Women's Day here in South Africa, a very significant and important day for women in the country and for the country in general. Now, we have got an amazing lady that's coming to speak at the lecture. Of course, it's Her Excellency, the President Michelle Bachelet of Chile. Why is it significant to have her? I suppose a lot of people are thinking, why go for her on a South African, particularly a South African holiday? What is it that she can add to it? What does she have that we are so honored to have her knowledge here in the country?
Well, I mean, she's a very accomplished person in her own right. Again, it's linked to what I was saying, that it's important to have people from outside, to have interaction and exchanges from people who may have different perspectives, so that we can understand what their own experiences are. And I think it's a particularly South African holiday, but I also think that it's a commemoration of women's struggles, of where women in this country have come from. And women in Chile, well, the Chilean society has also had to live with a lot of challenges.
Yeah, indeed they have.
Yeah, so I do believe that having President Bachelet is in fact in the spirit of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, because they have always, over the years, had different people from different countries. And that doesn't mean that there is no resource. There's no resource in South Africa that we don't have people in South Africa. But I think the most important thing is to say, hey, let's hear what other people are struggling with in their own countries. Yeah. What inspiration can we get from them?
Well, inspiration, and certainly how they've overcome it, because, I mean, if you look at this president, she's now just been sworn into her second term of a presidency in Chile as a female, heading up a country who has very much so gender and activism at heart. I mean, she really does take that very, very seriously. What can we learn from her? The lessons, especially when it comes to gender activism and getting further ahead. I mean, I know that we have gotten far here in South Africa when it comes to gender activism, but there is a long way to go still.
Yes, there is. There's also a long way to go in Chile, right? What we are meeting with President Bachelet about, we are meeting as equals, as people who are committed in the same cause in our own countries, but also globally. And when I say we meet as equals, of course she's the president, I'm not a president.
Yeah.
But when we are in the platform, we are in the platform to have a conversation as people who have particular concerns, as countries that have had very difficult journeys, And Chile's journey has been very, very difficult. It's got a very difficult history. So I think that's part of what she will help in terms of reflecting on those. Secondly, I think that it's important actually to have activists who make it into these positions of power to engage with activists, to engage with the public, to engage with people who are not in those positions, so that we can also understand their experiences, their difficulties in dealing with patriarchy in the highest offices that they are in.
Yeah. Now, like you say, you're meeting as equals, but this is not necessarily going to be at the Nelson Mandela dialogue. That'll be happening at the annual lecture. That's tomorrow. You're meeting on Sunday, and that's happening at the University of Cape Town, where the two of you're going to be a part of a panel in a gender dialogue conversation with President Bachelet. I find the topic quite interesting. It's the focus is on if gender still matters in the ongoing work of liberation. Very briefly, what are you focusing in on?
Well, we're looking at how gender is constructed. We're looking at the prevalence of gender-based violence. We're looking at the ways in which even war, even conflict is gendered. Certainly, I will be talking about nation and nation building as a gendered process and as a gendered issue. So we are focusing on violence, on why there is so much violence, and why there's so much gender-based violence. But we are talking about other things as well. I mean, for me, specifically, my particular area of engagement in that dialogue is going to be on how a nation is gendered. It's going to be on citizenship. It's going to focus on laws that we have in the country, the constitution, but also the various legislation, like the Traditional Courts Bill, and all these things, and how they undermine that work of liberation movement, and how do we get forward, how do we move beyond the obstacles and the challenges that we have.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you very, very much for talking to us. It's been a pleasure. So that's happening tomorrow, that Nelson Mandela, the annual lecture, and I must say it's going to be an incredible one this year, with President Michelle Bachelet of Chile delivering that, and especially on our Women's Day here in South Africa. And then again at UCT, there'll be a panel discussion, and Nomboniso Gasa, who's been our guest here on the program, who's a researcher and analyst and writer with with politics and cultural issues, will be a part of that panel as well. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's now time for your sports news. Where's Valen? There you are. Okay, Valen, because I know you've got some guests as well. I can see your guest in front of me, and you're over there. So I know you've got some stories for us. Valen, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Well, before we bring you that interview, let's start with rugby news. The Sharks' much vaunted Currie Cup strength goes on trial this weekend, albeit without their Springboks. The defending champions have a tough mission in Kimberley first up, but they're champing at the bit to kickstart their 2014 campaign on the front foot.
The pressure's on to produce. The Sharks haven't had as much time to prepare for this competition as their competitors, given their success in the Super Rugby tournament. But energy levels are high. They'll need to be on top of their game. The Griquas are a tough assignment.
We know it's going to be a physical battle up there, and by having five forwards on the bench, it gives us the opportunity to bring some fresh legs on in the second half. So we're bracing ourselves for a forward onslaught.
8 of their players are on national duty. They'll miss them, but at the same time it's a chance to blood new players. Terem Tembo will lead the squad.
The boys have started off well. They're adapting what we're trying to achieve this season. It's just how quickly we adapt. The quicker we adapt, the easier things are going to become.
By all accounts, brace yourself for hot Currie Cup action. Blaine Herman, SABC News, Durban.
No. All right, well, the Currie Cup season kicks off this weekend. It starts this evening in the Eastern Cape. The Kings are hosting the Western Province, and then the defending champions, the Sharks, play against the Griquas in Kimberley. It's a full weekend of Currie Cup fixtures. It's also a full weekend on the Absa Premiership front. The 2014-2015 season gets underway with defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns tonight against Maritzburg United at 8 p.m. at Loftus Versfeld. The fixtures continue on Saturday, and then there are 2 remaining fixtures on Sunday. Bloem Celtic playing host to Black Aces, and AmaZulu hosting Ajax Cape Town. All right, now as the country celebrates 20 years of democracy, our national women's football team turned 21 this year, and they've been at the forefront of women's football ever since. The team are hard at work to qualify for the Women's World Cup next year.